and welcome to the Film Pulse Podcast. This is episode number 282. My name's Adam Patterson. With me today, we got Kevin Rakestraw. How are you, Kevin?
Doing pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah.
This week, we'll be talking about Armando Iannucci's The Death of Stalin, along with someone we're watching on the watch list, and previewing some new releases in theaters, VOD, and Blu-ray. Thank you so much for listening. Appreciate it. I think we're going to just dive right into our review. We're talking about The Death of Stalin. This came out in limited release this weekend. The synopsis says, follows the Soviet dictator's last days and depicts the chaos of the regime after his death. Now, if you're not familiar with Armando Iannucci, he's the guy behind In the Loop and Veep. So I think if you're familiar with those, you have a good idea, and The Thick of It too, which was great. You have a good idea of what to expect with this one, the style of humor. So, Kevin, what did you think of The Death of Stalin?
This was a bit odd for me. Like, the majority of the humor, well, a good deal of the humor, kind of worked for me, but it was mostly all the small quips and stuff that really had nothing to do with Stalin, per se, or, like, the historical context of the film. And to me, it just ended up being this weird mishmash of things that didn't quite work, because there's the times where it tries to be like serious and just be like this historical film, and then mix that with the comedy that, like you kind of pointed out, if you're familiar with his film, familiar with his works, it's the same type of comedy that he does and everything. And for me, those two just never meshed well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually loved this movie. I think this movie... So I saw it at Sundance originally, and then I watched it again for this, just to refresh myself. And it's one of those movies, the dialogue is so fast, and there's so much going on that you're just getting rapid fire jokes. And I think that, like you said, the thing that works the best for me are these little just, like, blink and you'll miss moments that are just these funny little, like, offhanded comments made by some of the characters or something like that all of those elements are really what makes this work for me. I find it so funny, and even watching it a second time, there were jokes that I forgot about, or ones that I didn't pick up on the first time around that just made me laugh so much. And to your point about mixing in the comedy with the historical elements, I think that this is actually a great story to do that with, because it's such an absurd story. It's utterly ridiculous. And I did some research on this, and I actually read the graphic novel that this is based on, and a lot of what happens in this story actually is true. Like, it's not, obviously there's some creative license taken with the dialogue and some things that happen, but the broad strokes actually did happen. Like, I thought that the opening scene with the orchestra and the chaos of Stalin wanting it to be recorded, but it was a live broadcast, so they had to, like, lock the doors and keep everybody in and redo the whole thing and record it. Like, that actually happened. And a lot of these sequences, I thought, were just so absurd that I thought that the comedy, along with the historical elements, I thought that it worked pretty well. Now, there were some things, I mean, this is a dark comedy, to be sure. Like, this is a very dark comedy. There's Stalin's regime was not a light and fun one. You know, there was a lot of death. a lot of murders and a lot of horrible things that would happen. And they do touch on a lot of that stuff. I mean, you see people getting shot and tortured and, horrible, horrible things. I mean, there's a lot of implied things, especially with the his chief of security, Beria, who he was a rapist, and he was a child rapist, and they do touch on it, but I thought that the way that Iannucci handled it was the best that you could in the situation.
Yeah, to me, like, that stuff didn't work for me. And it doesn't, a lot of it doesn't come until later. And I think for me, up until that point, I was kind of like on the fence. Like, I was having some difficulty getting into it. Like, like I said, some of the comedy at the beginning was working for me, and then they would do some of the historical stuff, and it's like, well. And then you get to that point where, they're shooting civilians in the street, and they have his child rapist stuff going on, and it's just like, I don't think that this isn't working for me, I don't think.
Yeah, I can understand why some people may have a problem with it. I think that it is definitely a controversial topic to make as a comedy. As a side note, Russia banned this film, which is no surprise.
Yeah, not quite surprised there.
I don't know, for me, it was like one of those kind of things where I was laughing, but at the same time, I'm just like, it's like one of those uncomfortable laughs where you probably shouldn't be laughing at the situation because people did die. But I think that there was enough there where those elements were not, it wasn't like it was jam-packed with those things. Like they were kind of sprinkled in here and there, and there was enough other kind of just ridiculous bureaucracy and like the committee meetings and like just how petty all of these men were that it's for me at least, it sort of made up for those sort of more grim moments.
Well, and I don't know if maybe knowing a little bit more about this movie might have helped, because I was like, I didn't know anything going in, and I was kind of like caught off guard with the fact that like the accents and
I love that,
and who's in the movie. Like, there's just, they don't try at all, and it was just like, I didn't know Steve Buscemi was in this.
Yeah, so
to have him and others, and I was just,
he plays Khrushchev too.
And I think it kind of caught me off guard, a little bit at the beginning, just kind of like, wait, what's going on here? What are we doing? And I, for much of the beginning of the film, like 15, so even so much as throughout the entire thing, I just kept kind of thinking to myself, like, what's the point? What are we doing? I don't get why. Why are we doing this?
Because it's a crazy story that is told in a crazy fashion. I like the fact that they got Adrian McLaughlin to play Joseph Stalin, and he has this like super thick like Cockney accent. I thought it was just so absurd and silly, and I just had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was really funny. Jeffrey Tambor is Malenkov, he's the deputy general secretary, so he's like next in line after Stalin. So he's the one who is about to take over, and just what a bumbling fool he is the whole time. And then of course you have Beria, Simon Russell Beale, who plays Beria, who I thought was awesome. I thought that he was great in that role. Such an evil prick.
Well, and I think that's a big thing that definitely works for this film. Even though I had trouble getting into it, the performances alone are, like, for me, I didn't entirely, I don't think the movie worked, but at the same time, it wasn't an unenjoyable watch. And it's mostly because the performances are so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought Buscemi was great. I liked his kind of scheming and his, like, he seemed like the lesser of two evils between him and Beria, but he was still a pretty nasty person.
And
They're all
yeah. Well, in the immediate aftermath too of him and Beria, kind of like jostling for position, was quite funny to watch, especially because Buscemi is just so bad at it. But he starts to pick it up towards the end.
Yeah. Well, he does. He does pick it up. I mean, ultimately,
yeah,
we know that he actually does. He does take over. I thought that the way that they started it off with the orchestra scene, juxtaposing that with people being rounded up on these lists that were created, just random, seemingly random lists of people that Stalin had a problem with, and throwing them in, just rounding people up, throwing them in the gulag, executing them in front of their families, all these awful things. Just juxtaposing that with Patty Considine and Tom Brooke attempting to gather up this orchestra and redo this performance, and then the conductor passes out, so they have to go find another conductor, and just all of that chaos. And that's what I enjoyed so much about this movie, was just the chaos of it all. Just the because I think that's something that Iannucci really does well. He works well with like ensembles that are all kind of vying for attention and power between each other.
Oh yeah, he does do a fantastic job with that.
Yeah, you see that in The Loop, you see it in Veep, and it's like this seems like a perfect story for him to tell. I mean, especially like, you have, like, right after this scene, you have Stalin, who has a stroke, and he's unconscious on the floor, and the guards just stand there because they were explicitly told they're never to disturb him no matter what. And they hear him falling, but they don't dare go in there and check on him. So he just lays there in his own piss overnight. And then after they do find him, they have to form the committee and then decide how they're going to get a doctor, because Stalin had all of the doctors, all the good doctors, sent to the gulag. So they have to get the bad doctors, which I loved that whole exchange. Like, from them, every single person that comes in kneels in the piss. And then they have to, like, pick him up and carry him into his room. But even that has to be, like, a decision that they all kind of unanimously agree upon. And then the doctors that they get in are funny, to say the least.
I do like that was one of my favorite parts, is when they just keep making fun of the doctors. Well, like, the one guy, like, how old he is. And the other guy's essentially dead.
Yeah, he goes, how old are you? 29? That's a lie. And then you have Rupert Friend coming in as the son, as Stalin's son, who's an alcoholic. And when they brought him in and he saw the doctors, the way that he reacted, and he goes, "You're not even a person. You're mostly hair. You're not even a person."
There is a great deal of comedy at the beginning. Unfortunately for me, it waned about the midway point. Yeah, and then towards the end, it just, because it makes that transition into, like, trying to be this not solely serious historical drama, but like it leans heavier on the serious side than the comedy side. And to me, that transition just really didn't work for me too well. But you're right. Like at the beginning of this movie, it is nonstop, just ridiculous, and quite funny, quite humorous.
Yeah.
And I do. One of my favorite parts is when, because I did think that Rupert Friend was fantastic. I love when he shows up at the funeral and kind of goes off, and they tackle him. He tries to spit in the guy's face.
He spits on himself. That's one of my favorite scenes too. Just thinking about it, that might be in the trailer. You might be able to see that in the trailer. But when Rupert Friend spits on himself,
and it literally goes up like an inch in the air, and then just lands on his hairline, and then just stays there.
One of the scenes that made me laugh a lot was, so they have Stalin's like viewing, and they invite everyone from Moscow to file in, and they have this big ceremony where you can view him, and they're trying to have a discussion. All of the councils, they're all trying to have this discussion, but they're like in a specific position in this thing, and Buscemi's trying to have this conversation with I forget who he was trying to talk to.
I think he was trying to talk to Beria.
Yeah, I think he was trying to talk to Beria. So he asked to switch with Melnikov, Jeffrey Tambor, and he's like, no. And he's like, no. We'll make it look like it's part of the party. And so he starts to like move slowly in front of Jeffrey Tambor until he's like right in front of him, and Jeffrey Tambor just goes, "What the fuck are you doing?" I don't know. That part just really made me laugh, and the fact that they were losing it over the bishops when Barry invited the bishops in.
Yes.
Yeah, I just had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was, I don't think people would go into this movie expecting it to be 100% historically accurate.
Oh no!
But I think that one of the most shocking things is a lot of the things that you expect not to be were actually historically accurate. Like a lot of the stuff that was, sort of other than the obvious things like the accents and things like that, were like cabinet positions and things like that were slightly tweaked. But there's a lot of stuff with this story that's just unknown. Like there's a lot of missing pieces that sort of have to be filled in, and there's different accounts of different things. So it's really impossible to know exactly what happened with this power struggle that occurred after Stalin's death. But one of the crazy scenes was after he dies and they remove his body, they essentially empty his entire house, and they do it all in 30 minutes probably. And then they end up sending every single person that was in there to the gulag. And that actually happened, which is wild. But it's a crazy story. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it.
I was kind of like in the middle. Kind of in the middle. I did enjoy myself to a certain extent.
I would just love Iannucci to do this with all, like, every other historical big, political event that's taken place in history. I would just love it. I think he should do it with everything. I think he's such a master at it.
He does do a great job with chaotic ensembles and swearing. Those are his things.
He definitely, yes, he
insults and ensembles. That's his thing.
Yeah, I do like. Yeah, if you're a fan of how kind of sharp-tongued everyone is in Veep with their witty witty takedowns of the people that they are around. You'll enjoy this one too, because they're like constantly talking shit on each other, and it's pretty funny. I also enjoyed just that one scene in when they were sort of plotting. They like broke off into groups and they were sort of plotting in the woods. And the first part of it was Jeffrey Tambor pissing, and he goes, I like to stare at an officer right in the eyes when I'm taking a piss. It ruins their day. And he goes, and then Barry goes, try pissing on an officer next time. That'll ruin his day too. And then you have Buscemi also plotting, and then when the daughter arrives, they're all trying to run to her to get to her first, because that's how petty these guys are. And all the while, Buscemi's still plotting, and I can't remember who he was running with, but he was like, "How can you plot and run at the same time?"
Yeah, I think it was him and Michael Palin.
Yes, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, Molotov. I would recommend reading the graphic novel too. The movie is very similar. Like they lifted a lot of, like, the structure is very similar. It starts with the orchestra and sort of all of the beats are there, but the graphic novel goes into depth a little bit more with the story. But the graphic novel still sort of, it's a little bit more serious than the movie, and they definitely go into more graphic detail when it comes to some of the more kind of horrible things that these men did. But I would definitely say it's worth a read.
Is the graphic novel, is there a decent amount of comedy in that?
It's a decent. It's a little bit.
Okay.
It's a little bit. It, rather than sort of injecting jokes, it just relies on the absurdity of the actual event.
Okay, that makes sense.
But, you know, there's some, like, they still sort of talk that way to each other. You know, there's lots of, like, swearing and talking down to each other and stuff like that. Like, that's still there in the graphic novel, but definitely worth a read. It's like $10 on, if you want to get the digital version, on Amazon.
All right.
All right. Kevin, what are you going to give The Death of Stalin out of 10?
I gave it like a 6.
All right. I totally forgot what I scored this. It was probably a 7.5 or an 8 for me on this one.
All right.
This is playing in limited release right now, so I would keep an eye out for this when it hits VOD, because I would say it's definitely worth a look. And, you know, comedies have been so dry lately. I mean, by that I mean there hasn't been a lot of them, like decent comedies coming out, and I think that this is definitely a breath of fresh air when it comes to comedy selections. Because this one had me hooting and hollering.
I think for me that's another
hooting
reason.
And hollering.
It's another reason that it is a little more enjoyable than perhaps it actually was. Because it's just like the dearth of comedies. And again, the performances too, I think, helped out.
Yeah, great casting. I really enjoyed the casting choices on this. All right, that's The Death of Stalin. Steve Buscemi.
What the fuck? Like, I had no idea, and he shows up, and I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? What the fuck is this?
It was a very random choice, but I think it worked. All right, let's move on. Talk about someone we're watching on the watch list. Oh boy, I got a good number of movies here.
Oh jeez.
I saw Midnighters. This is a horror film that came out last weekend, I believe. Was it last? It was, might have been the weekend before. Directed by Julius Ramsey. Sort of an interesting genre mashup. This couple is out driving and they end up hitting someone with their car. And they, rather than, calling the police or whatever, they decide to take the body back to their house. And because the one of them was the husband who was driving, he was drinking, so he was concerned about being arrested. So they take the body back to the house, and it turns out that the man was not dead, and the sister who lives with them, she comes home, and the guy wakes up, and it seems like he's trying to attack her, so she freaks out and ends up killing him. And after they look at the body, they discover that the guy had their address written down in his pocket. So they realize that this man was heading to their address. And it sort of goes on from there. I don't want to give too much away. But lots of twists, lots of turns. It's a pretty fun movie. I would definitely recommend checking it out. It goes to some interesting places. Nothing incredible, but still worth a look. It's called Midnighters.
Okay. I saw Ken Loach's I, Daniel Blake.
Nice.
And it pretty much ended up being what I thought it was going to be. It centers around this middle-aged carpenter who has a heart problem. Doctor says can't go back to work, right? He's on the state welfare. They decide that he's okay to go back to work, even though his doctor says that he's not. And it becomes this mess because he can't get his benefits. So he tries to sign up for another set of benefits, but it's kind of like unemployment where you have to go around and hand out a resume and you have to show that you're looking for work. So he ends up going that route where he's going around handing out a CV, but ultimately it's just a huge waste of time because he can't take any of the jobs that he's applying for because he's not able to work, but he has to prove that he's looking for work, and it's just this, he's getting the runaround, right? Which, for a large chunk of this movie, works out pretty well, But then when they throw in this a single mother with two kids, kind of going through the same issues, and they kind of end up bonding and helping each other out. At some point, Ken Loach, for whatever reason, decides to escalate their hardships. And which seems kind of unnecessary because it seems like it's working enough, that you can easily sympathize with them, and it's all working well enough. And then he escalates it with a small scene with the mother where she's caught shoplifting, and the security guard there is here's my number, I can help you if you need help. And at that moment, it's when it kind of all starts to fall apart for me because I'm thinking, I have a feeling I know where you're going to take this, and you really don't need to take it that way. And of course, that is where he takes it. And it also, for me, didn't make a whole lot of sense because in taking it in that direction, he only does it for one scene where the main guy, Dave Johns, who plays Daniel, confronts her, and they hashed out, and it's supposed to be this big emotional moment, but that's it. And it just seems why did you have to take it that way just for one scene when you had enough emotion going on throughout the entire movie that you didn't really need this? Just, to me, towards the end, he just kind of escalated it too much, where instead of being this kind of even-keeled social, like, realism type film dealing with issues, it just piled it on too thick towards the end and just kind of undercut everything for me. Because I was kind of surprised, like, early on, like, towards the middle of the movie, I was kind of surprised, like, wow, I'm actually really enjoying this. And then it kind of fell apart.
All right. That's Daniel Blake. I kind of suspected the same.
Yeah,
I would have the same
if you
reaction.
don't watch it, you're not missing anything.
Okay.
You've seen plenty other films like this.
All right. Let's see. One movie that I would recommend. I saw this on Netflix. It doesn't have the little Netflix original moniker on it, so I don't know if it is considered a Netflix original, but I don't think it was released any other way, at least in the US. I could be wrong about that, but anyway, it's called Veronica. It's the new one by Paco Plaza, he's the director of the Wreck movies, which I was a big fan of, at least the first two. This is a supernatural sort of possession movie about this teenager named Veronica who, when she uses a Ouija board with her friends during a solar eclipse at school, and she tries to communicate with her father who passed away, but when she does the sort of seance, it unleashes a demon, basically, and that demon decides to go after her and her siblings. She lives with two sisters and a very young brother, and it's your kind of typical possession slash haunted house movie, but people are just raving about this one. They're calling it one of the scariest movies ever made, and I will say that it is scary, but it's not even close to the scariest movie ever made. But it is a very well made film, regardless.
I hate when they do that. It seems like when the horror movies come out nowadays, everyone tries to go that angle.
Yeah,
like, oh, it's one of the scariest movies.
I think it was like mainly Twitter that was losing it over this one. If you look on Letterboxd, people are much more grounded when it comes to this one. I mean, most people like it, but there's some really interesting camera work in this one. He does some really cool stuff. I mean, if you're familiar with if you've seen any of his other movies, he likes to employ some really kind of unique and creative cinematography, and the same goes for this one. There's some really interesting things that he does that looked really awesome. For the most part, it's a pretty solid haunted house flick. I would definitely recommend it. The children, the performances of the children in this movie are quite good, and that's, as we've talked about many times before, I'm very hard on child actors.
It seems like you're starting to come around now.
I
think it's been a while since
yes and no. Yes and no. There was a movie I saw last week. I'll have a review up. It's called Prodigy. That had a child actor in it, and she was not good. Like she was really bad in it, and it brought the whole movie down. So maybe I'm softening up a little bit on it, but not that much. Anyway, Veronica, definitely worth a look. It's on Netflix.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
I think you would enjoy it. You know, it's the jump scares they're plentiful, but they, if I remember correctly, for the most part, they're not that cheap. They all feel like they kind of earned their jump scare moment. And I enjoyed it. It's about a girl becoming a woman. That's sort of what it's about.
Oh, wow.
And she's got a lot of problems to deal with.
I saw the documentary Last Men in Aleppo, which is also on Netflix. You can watch it on the Netflix there.
Yeah, a lot of buzz behind this one.
This is, if you just want to cry a lot, if you're looking to see the world as a terrible, terrible place and just cry your eyes out, Last Men in Aleppo is good for that. It'll show you, like, simultaneously human beings being just awful, awful trash, just being the worst things on the planet, but then also just human beings being just pure goodness. Because it follows around the white helmets, and most of it is them kind of hanging about at their headquarters or whatever, just watching the skies, watching the planes. And then once a bombing goes off, they rush there, and then it's, footage of them just like going through the rubble and trying to save people. Sometimes they save people, sometimes they don't. And a lot of times the people that they don't save are babies. So I think there's like 3 or 4 times where they pull a dead baby out of the rubble. And it's too much. It's so difficult to watch.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I sort of avoided it.
It'll crush you. It'll fucking crush you. And then there's also some footage in there of them just kind of like hanging out, playing soccer, talking with their kids, taking their kids to the playground, like all that kind of stuff. They just like them trying to live their lives in a part of Syria that's constantly being bombed, where they're always looking at the skies, identifying planes and this and that. So it's definitely worth a look. And if these guys are just like most of them were like carpenters and construction workers, and they just assembled this team, the White Helmets, where they like I said, they track the sky, they follow the smoke, and they just go in and try and save people.
That's Last Man in Aleppo on Netflix. Nominated for Academy Award, that one.
Yeah.
I saw a documentary on Netflix as well. This is a documentary series called Wild Wild Country. It comes out this Friday. So the whole series will be available this Friday. Highly worth a look. It is about I'll call it a cult. I call it a cult in my review. My review will be up by the time this comes out. So it's this cult that was formed. They formed the leader started it in India. After it grew to a certain point, they ended up moving to Oregon to start their cult. And they ended up buying this giant ranch. It was like 100 square miles. This ranch was enormous, and they essentially built a city from the ground up. It was nothing but like kind of desert there, and they built an airport. They built like strip malls. They built a hotel. They created an entire city there to hold all of their members, and it was, like a lot of these cult stories, it seemed like it was a fairly benign group of people, like they didn't have that many like the basis of their religion didn't seem too crazy or anything like that. It was sort of like just a hippie commune, really.
Yeah.
They weren't at like Jonestown levels of craziness or Heaven's Gate. It was a very grounded religion that it sort of actually denounced religion in a lot of ways. It was all about like meditation and becoming one with yourself, and the I don't know. It seemed like it was a fairly normal practice, but the people that were in the neighboring town, I think the town was called Antelope, they did not like them there, because there were like thousands of people that were going to this, that were living there, and they wanted them out. So they started to try to get them out. And as a result, you had this sort of land struggle where they would try to, the townspeople would try to do something to get them kicked out or prevent them from building on their own land. And then they would retaliate by buying up property in Antelope and then moving people into the town of Antelope. And then eventually they ended up buying so much property and moving in so many people that they voted in members on the city council. And then they had the name of Antelope, the city name, changed. And it just it was just this kind of snowball effect. And then it just gets so much crazier from there. Because, I mean, this was a big international story. This was huge when it was developing. I think they moved there in like 1981, and then things really sort of got crazy, maybe 85-ish. But this was a big story, and somehow I was completely oblivious to this. Like, I didn't know anything about this. Have you heard of this?
No, I have not.
The Rajneeshis?
No, but this sounds absolutely insane.
It is really insane. I would say if you're not familiar with it, I mean, even if you are, don't look up any backstory or anything like that. Just start watching the show. And I would say that it's a 6-part documentary series, so it's pretty long, but you will get hooked. I ended up watching this in 2 sittings, I think, and it's just, yeah, it is completely enthralling. The documentary itself, very well made. It's done by the guys who did Battered Bastards of Baseball, which was another really excellent documentary. And yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's called Wild Wild Country. Some of the stuff that happens, some of the stuff they do is just so insane. You're just like, what is happening? Like, this was something that really happened. And the cool thing is the group, they were really into like documenting everything. So there's tons of footage, like tons and tons of footage of everything. So they're able to use all kinds of footage in the movie. And they're also able to interview, they get some of the key members of the group, some of the highest ranking members of the group, to be in the film as well, including I think her name was Sheila, Ma Anand Sheila. She was the secretary to the leader, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, and she was sort of the person who controlled everything. She was the like invisible hand of the group, and so they were able to interview her extensively, and that's what really makes the documentary come together. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend checking it out. It comes out on Friday, Wild Wild Country. It's executive produced by the Duplass brothers. So I don't know if that makes it more enticing or not, but
definitely interesting. I'm going to check that one out.
They definitely do a great job of the sort of carrot on the stick, where towards the end of each episode or part rather, something will happen and you'll just be like, oh my God, I have to know what this is. What? And you just, it's very binge worthy.
Gotcha. What else you got? Because I'm done.
All right, I got a couple things. I got The Outsider. This is the one that just came out. The Jared Leto Netflix one about him becoming. It takes place in post World War II Japan. I think it's like 1954, and he was I think a prisoner of war. I don't know if they even ever say that explicitly, but he was in prison for some reason, and while in prison, he ends up saving the life of a high-ranking Yakuza member, and this Yakuza member, as a thank you, sort of gives him a job, gets him out of prison, gives him a job, and he ends up becoming a member of the Yakuza. And it's rough. It's not very good, as expected. I don't know why this movie exists. It probably shouldn't in today's climate. I mean, they had to know that there was going to be a backlash about this. One thing that they do that I was thankful for, most of the film is in Japanese. So it's not like they completely whitewashed it and made everybody speak English.
Okay. Well, that's good.
So I was thankful for that. I mean, even Leto speaks Japanese in it sometimes. His character doesn't know Japanese very well, but it gets better as he progresses, as the film progresses. This is your pretty standard gangster story. Jared Leto's horrible in it. Probably one of the worst roles I've ever seen him in. He barely talks. I mean, he barely has any lines in this movie whatsoever. He has no emotion. There's no rhyme or reason behind what he does. You just, other than of course they force in this love story, this half-assed love story between him and the sister of the guy he saves, who she's also sort of works for the Yakuza. Just bland. It's brutally violent, but it feels sort of out of place at times. Not good. Not good. Skip it. Definitely not worth a look.
I can definitely do that.
Yeah, as expected. Not worth a look. The final one that I'll mention is a movie called Demon House. This comes out this week. It's directed by Zach Baggins. Now, if you're not familiar with Zach Baggins, he is one of the hosts of Ghost Adventures on the Travel Channel. So he decided to make himself a documentary for some reason. It's about him. So there was this big story that happened back in 2014 of this family who claimed that their house was haunted. And it was sort of like the Amityville horror, very similar situation where they ended up fleeing the house. They left the house saying that it was haunted. They couldn't live there anymore. And all of these awful things happened to them. And even people that were just connected to them, people that would just go into the house would have horrible things happen to them. And it was weird. I mean, I'll give them that. It was some very, very strange things happened around this house. And there were actual like police reports and Child Protective Service workers who reported on these strange occurrences. Like they witnessed them too. So it wasn't just like the word of the family that was living there, which makes it a little bit more interesting than, the Amityville horror, which, this is just the family making up bullshit for money or fame or whatever. So Zach Baggins decides he's going to buy this house. So he just straight up buys it and decides to do his own investigation. And it starts off pretty interesting because he talks about the house and he interviews some people and he goes with the history of it and everything. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is kind of creepy. And then like he he's like, I want to be as objective as possible. If there's nothing here, I want to know it. And like he goes through possible reasons behind some of the things that happen. And these are really interesting. Like some of the stuff that he finds, it's very interesting, but he doesn't follow up on it at all. He's just like, oh, this could be it. And then that's the end of it. So he very clearly wants people to think that this is like an actual haunted house. And he just wants you to believe in this. And then all this weird stuff starts to happen with like him and his crew, and it gets so ridiculous. To call this movie a documentary is, it's offensive to call this movie a documentary, because I'm sorry, but there's just no way what happens in this movie is real. Like, it just utterly ridiculous. He decides to close himself up in the house. So he has his crew board him up.
Jesus.
In the house. And then his eyes go crossed and he just turns cross-eyed and now he's cross-eyed for the rest of his life.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
No. Nope.
This sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I might have to watch this. Sounds so stupid.
It just looks like a long episode of one of those ghost hunting shows.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like an actual movie to me. It may be a little bit of a higher production value, but he does like all of these he just makes all these strange choices. Something like a student filmmaker would do. Like, he just throws in all of these different effects and stuff. Like, he's just going to town on it. Like, he'll just do random slow motion and like he narrates the whole thing, but he's the absolute worst narrator ever. And some of the stuff that he says is so funny, because he's like, I didn't know what to expect when I went into this house, but little did I know I was fucked. And like stuff like that, where he's just like, okay, so this is clearly not supposed to be like an actual like educational thing that we're doing here. This isn't like a real documentary, is it?
It just sounds like you got dicking around.
Yeah, so he narrates a lot of it. I mean, he narrates the whole time, but then randomly you'll just see like text pop up on the screen. It'll be like, I had to let my crew go the next day because they were like too frightened. And it was like, why didn't you just say that? You've been talking nonstop through the whole movie. Why did you decide to put that up in text form?
Because
it's so bad.
He had to return the equipment. He couldn't record it.
It's so bad. Again, it's based on a very interesting thing that happened, a very, very interesting event. And I think that if he decided to pursue the possible reason behind this strange occurrence, I'm not going to say what it is, but if he decided to pursue that, it could have changed the documentary, and it could have actually turned it into a really interesting kind of social commentary. So Demon House, it'll be out this week, and I'll have a full review up on the site probably as you're listening to this. That's all I got. Let's take a look at some new releases in theaters this week. We have Tomb Raider. I want this to be good. I don't have any expectations for it, but
it's not gonna be.
It looks like it follows the remake of Tomb Raider, the reboot that came out a few years ago, very closely. We also have Love, Simon. This is a teen comedy about a young man who's in the closet, and I guess it's about him telling everybody about it.
Okay. All right.
It's funny. I watched that show Riverdale, sort of a guilty pleasure of mine. And this last week's episode of Riverdale, they talked about Love, Simon like 3 times. And I'm like, what the fuck? What is this? Like product placement for a movie? Let's see. We also have Journey's End. This looks like a war film. We got I Can Only Imagine. I'm not sure what that's about, but judging by the poster, it looks like a faith-based movie.
It does. It does look like faith-based.
Because you have the sun beaming in through the clouds and him looking up to the heavens.
And they're walking. He's got an arm on his shoulder.
Yeah. We got Flower coming out. I'd recommend Flower. This one...
I'm sorry. I opened up I Can Only Imagine.
All right.
Is see what it is. So at the top of the poster, it says, the song you know, the story you don't. So that already like tips me off like, wait, this is based on a song? And it is apparently the inspiring and unknown true story behind Mercy Me's beloved chart-topping song that brings ultimate hope to so many. Is a gripping reminder of the power of true forgiveness. So apparently this is based on a song by some band.
Based on the song.
From some band called Mercy Me.
You've probably heard that song before.
Maybe.
It's called I Can Only Imagine.
Oh, I think I do know that song.
You know that song. If you've ever listened to like a soft rock radio station, Warm 103.
That's what it is. It's a movie about that song.
That's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I would recommend Flower. It's a pretty decent coming of age comedy. We also have Dear Dictator. We got Ramen Heads. That's a documentary about ramen. Demon House, as I mentioned. Skip that, please. Josie. Not sure what that's all about. And Keep the Change. That's I think it's a romantic comedy about someone with autism falling in love.
Yeah.
And then that's pretty much it. Let's see what we got on the old VOD coming up this week. All right, on March 13th, we got Attack of the Southern Fried Zombies.
Mm-hmm.
We got Old Man. We got Seeking Wellness. We got Prodigy. We got Hell's Kitty. Where Have You Gone, Lou DiMaggio? Documentary about the comedian Lou DiMaggio. Invincible Force. And then on Friday, we have Dear Dictator, Allure. And then on Netflix, you have Take Your Pills, which is a documentary, I'm assuming, about drugs, prescription drugs.
Okay.
Like, we don't have enough of those. Demon House. Also on Netflix is Wild Wild Country. The Forgiven. Furlough. Benji comes out. That's also on Netflix. New Benji movie.
Okay. All right.
And that's it. Huge VOD week this week. Blu-ray this week. We got The Shape of Water. I'd probably recommend checking that out if you haven't yet.
Yeah.
Justice League. Skip that. Actually, you know what? Watch it just to see Henry Cavill's fucking face. And ask yourself, who decided this was something that they wanted to move forward with? Such an awful idea. Such an awful movie. The Disaster Artist. I would definitely recommend checking that out. Even for Franco haters like Kevin. Think you'll enjoy it. I, Tanya. Another one that I would highly recommend.
Oh, this is big.
I enjoyed that one. I liked that one so much more than I expected to, really.
This is a big Blu-ray week.
Yeah, it is. Call Me By Your Name.
Jesus Christ.
Another huge one. Again, high recommendation for me to check that one out. Suspiria from 1977 is getting a new 2-disc Blu-ray edition. Arrow's releasing George Romero's The Crazies from 1973.
All right.
Ferdinand is coming out. That animated film Bird Boy comes out on Blu-ray. Children of the Corn Runaway is out. Yeah, it's a new Children of the Corn movie.
Stop it.
How about that? Season of the Witch from 1972 comes out on Arrow Blu-ray. And that is pretty much it. What about Criterions this week?
We have one Criterion. That's 1993. Martin Scorsese's The Age of Innocence. With your Daniel Day-Lewis, Michelle Pfeiffer, Winona Ryder, Richard E. Grant, based on the Edith Wharton novel.
I've never seen that movie.
Me either.
We should have a review for that one up on the site at some point this week. And I think that's going to do it. Thank you so much for listening. You can send us your questions and topics to feedback@filmpulse.net. Follow us on Twitter @FilmPulseNet and @FilmPulseKevin. And if you have a minute, take a look at our Patreon page, patreon.com/FilmPulse. Consider helping us out by becoming a subscriber. For Kevin Rakestraw, my name's Adam Patterson. We'll see you next week. Грусть, печаль, журавлей гостя. Это очень жаль, что случилось.